tonight.
That's totally a false story. That's another lie.
President Trump contradicts Iran's claim of arresting more than a dozen CIA spies, as video surfaces of Iranian commandos rappelling onto a British tanker. This as a Venezuelan fighter jet is caught on tape tailing a U.S. surveillance plane.
He was a modest and a humble man.
And the nation remembers former Supreme Court Justice John Paul Stevens. Plus, the monumental memorial to the first manned mission to the moon. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation.
Iran is back at it again, stoking new concerns in the Middle East. Welcome to Faith Nation. I'm John Jessup.
And I'm Jenna Browder. Tonight, major developments out of the Middle East. Iran says it has arrested 17 Iranian nationals working for the CIA, and some of them have been sentenced to death.
This comes on the heels of a move the United Kingdom is calling tit for tat after the regime seized a British oil tanker. CBN News national security correspondent Eric Phillips joins us with the latest. Eric?
Well, John and Jenna, it seems the U.S. and Iran simply cannot agree on the facts these days. You'll remember just last week when the U.S. brought down an Iranian drone and the regime said, nope, didn't happen. Well, now you've got a serious assertion coming from Tehran, and the U.S. is categorically denying it. Monday, Iran's Fars news agency released what it labels as pictures of CIA officers serving as handlers for the captured spies. 17 Iranian nationals the regime accuses of working as contractors and consultants in sensitive fields such as economic, nuclear, military, and cyber. The president calling the reports a hoax.
That's totally a false story. That's another lie. They put out propaganda. They put out lies. We are ready for the absolute worst, and we're ready for sense, too.
This comes just days after Iran seized a British oil tanker, the Stena Impero, in the Strait of Hormuz, claiming it violated international law. Iranian TV releasing this video of crew members aboard that ship. Officials in Tehran say the seizure was in response to Britain's role in impounding an Iranian supertanker 2 weeks ago off the coast of Gibraltar.
When the British stop an Iranian ship and show hostile behavior, they shouldn't expect us to show tolerance.
Now officials in the UK are working to assemble a European-led protection mission in the Strait of Hormuz.
We have seen, as I say, a ratcheting up in the last 3 weeks of events and tensions in the Straits of Hormuz and with Iran as a whole. We need to make sure that we thwart this, go back to the bigger picture of the relationship with Iran and make sure that we protect our international shipping.
The bigger picture has everything to do with the nuclear deal that has the U.S. and Iran at odds. And the threat of war has British officials concerned about getting sucked into the conflict. This, as Secretary of State Mike Pompeo announced new sanctions Monday as part of the max pressure campaign aimed at the regime.
That the United States is imposing sanctions on the Chinese entity Zhuing Jingrong and its chief executive, Yumin Li. They violated U.S. law by accepting crude oil. We can't tolerate more money going to the Ayatollah, putting American soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines, and putting their life at risk.
And tonight, another move that could be a telltale sign of what's to come. Reports that the U.S. is staging troops at a key Saudi military base that was used during previous Middle East wars, one that had been deserted for more than 15 years. We'll certainly be watching this one closely, John and Jenna.
Thanks, Eric. Well, after nearly 2 decades, the war in Afghanistan is America's longest war. Today, during an Oval Office meeting with the Prime Minister of Pakistan, President Trump said he's working with Pakistan and other countries to pull America out of Afghanistan.
We're not fighting a war. If we wanted to fight a war in Afghanistan and win it, I could win that war in a week. I just don't want to kill 10 million people. Does that make sense to you? I don't want to kill 10 million people. I have plans on Afghanistan that if I wanted to win that war, Afghanistan would be wiped off the face of the earth. It would be gone. It would be over literally in 10 days. And I don't want to do that. I don't want to go that route.
The president said the United States does not want to act as the policeman in Afghanistan.
The U.S. says a Venezuelan fighter jet caught tailing an American military plane was aggressive and unprofessional. This video released from the U.S. Southern Command shows an Su-30 Russian-made fighter that the U.S. says aggressively shadowed an American EP-3. U.S. officials are accusing the Venezuelan jet of, quote, jeopardizing the crew and aircraft, and say the maneuver was made at an unsafe distance. Senator Marco Rubio in a tweet said, quote, Venezuela only has 3 fighter jets that can fly. If they ever harmed any U.S. aircraft, they would soon have 0.
Well, we're just 2 days away from former special counsel Robert Mueller's long-awaited appearance before Congress.
Long-awaited indeed. Well, he is expected to field questions about his team's investigation into Russian interference in the 2016 presidential election. CBN News White House correspondent Ben Kennedy joins us from the North Lawn with the White House's latest response. Ben?
Jenna, John, President Trump team calls the hearing an insult to Mueller and taxpayers. It's been 3 months since the release of Mueller's 448-page report, but Democrats maintain it's not been on many folks' summer reading list. Former counsel Robert Mueller made it clear he won't go beyond what he wrote in his report.
We chose those words carefully, and the work speaks for itself. And the report is my testimony.
On Wednesday, he faces 5 counts of questioning before 2 House committees.
People have said, see the movie, not read the book. But what if this whole thing ends up being a dud?
Well, we hope it won't end up being a dud, and we're going to ask specific questions.
Those questions will pertain to obstruction of justice, a charge some lawmakers say he's committed. Democrats are counting on the testimony to lead to impeachment or damage the president's chance at re-election.
The report presents very substantial evidence that the president is guilty of high crimes and misdemeanors, and we have to present, or let Mueller present those facts to the American people.
President Trump pushed back on Twitter, saying highly conflicted Robert Mueller should not be given another bite of the apple. In the end, it will be bad for him and the phony Democrats in Congress who have done nothing but waste time on this ridiculous witch hunt.
He still ruled no collusion, no obstruction, and this thing should have ended a long time ago. This has been going on for 2.5 years, and we're never going to allow this to happen to another president again, because most of them wouldn't be able to take it.
The president insists his team cooperated fully with the investigation, which found no collusion between his campaign and Russia. But the chairman of the House Intel Committee says the impact of Wednesday's testimony could be felt at the end of Trump's term.
The case will be reopened when he leaves office, providing the statute of limitations has not run, and the Justice Department will have to weigh whether to indict the former president. From my point of view, if the evidence supports that, he should be indicted.
Now, the president's schedule Wednesday includes lunch with Vice President Mike Pence and executive time. He first told poll reporters today that he will not watch the Mueller testimony, but then said he may watch a little bit from his residence right here behind me at the White House. John, Jenna?
Now, Ben, aside from the testimony, the Trump administration's focus this week is on a critical debt and budget bill.
Yeah, John, we're hearing they're pretty close to making a deal with House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. We're talking about a $1.3 trillion agreement, which would restore the government's ability to borrow into the next administration and even build upon recent budget gains for the Pentagon and domestic agencies. But again, the tentative deal is still being worked out as we wait for the final details. John, Jenna?
All right, Ben Kennedy at the White House, thank you. Well, with that, we want to bring in our panel to help us break down some of the day's headlines. Caitlin Conan is the political director at CBS News, and David Brody, CBN's chief political analyst. First, we want to talk about this back and forth between President Trump and the squad. It's getting a lot of attention. Over the weekend, President Trump seemed to almost double down, and he continues to go after Congresswoman Ilhan Omar especially. Mm-hmm. Is this send her back chant, Caitlin? What it was for Hillary Clinton in 2016?
Well, I think it's clear that President Trump wants to make a foil out of the squad. And I think he thinks that it can fire up his base and his core supporters, much like he did in 2018 with Speaker Pelosi. We saw lots of ads for all the congressional candidates saying, elect us, we don't want Pelosi in the House. It's obvious that he wants the squad to take that place. But what remains to be seen is how independents will take to this message. And in 2016, President Trump won election in large part due to independents. And I think they would probably rather be talking about the economy, the courts, than having this Twitter fight play out between the president and the squad. And last time I was on with you guys, we were talking about Labor Secretary Acosta, who was resigning because he went out in front of the White House and said, I have to resign because this controversy with Epstein is a distraction from talking about how great the economy is and how well we're doing with unemployment numbers. And now here we are on week 2, not talking about the economy. We're again talking about the squad. So I think it remains to be seen how this plays out in terms of a long-term strategy.
David, the president seemed to take some steps back from his disavowal last week, again praising that crowd over the weekend. What happens the next time that he's at a rally? Did he do enough to prevent the crowd from saying it, and how would he respond?
50-50. It's a jump ball. We have no idea. Doesn't that make it interesting, though, if you think about it? Look, it's funny. It started as a 24 to 48-hour news cycle. It's now gone to a week of a news cycle. Right. He turned it in today with that tweet about when he invoked the R word. He's now made a news cycle a news cyclone. And eventually, this is really going to be a new contour for the whole race. I mean, you know, forget the news cycle. I think we're past that. I think he's developed a contour. Clearly, the White House thinks they can win I know a lot of critics will say, stoke racial tensions. Call it whatever you want. But the bottom line is there's this underbelly in America that he's speaking to, which masks or at least brings out a lot of stuff and some uncomfortable stuff we may not want to talk about in this country.
Well, so to the Muller report, he's supposed to testify, the former special counsel, on Wednesday this week. You know, we're not expecting to learn a lot new because it's all, as he said, in that report. Caitlin, how do Democrats benefit here?
Well, I think, as you mentioned, we don't expect him to say anything new. He's already said that he's not going to talk about anything that's beyond the report. But the Democrats want to keep focus on these investigations and on what the president may or may not have done. And the president obviously is not thrilled with this. He wants to change the subject. He said he's not going to watch the hearing, but that remains to be seen.
He has executive time.
Exactly. Exactly. So, yeah, this is something the Democrats want to keep talking about. But Mueller, as FBI director, he's testified before Congress dozens of times, and I don't expect him to get frazzled or say anything that he doesn't want to say.
I think this is a last-ditch effort by the Democrats to build public opinion for impeachment. I mean, we saw this with Nixon and Watergate, that it didn't start out so well for it started out well for Nixon, and then it kind of deteriorated. They're hoping this is going to be the same thing, because it's not just MSNBC and CNN and all the cable networks. All the major networks are going to cover this, which means, you know, The Price is Right, I won't be able to watch it because it's on CBS, which is basically the headline of this whole story.
Yeah, David, do you think this strategy, though, if this is in fact their strategy, could this backfire on Democrats?
Oh, I think there's a big backfire potential here because, once again, you know, everybody's talking about, oh, this is the movie version, right? I mean, if no one read the book, this is the movie. Well, but people read the crib notes, you know, and most people do read the crib notes. And the crib notes, as Donald Trump will say, no collusion, no obstruction. I think there's some asterisks involved in that. But the point is that folks get a good sense of that. And therefore, all of this on Wednesday is going to feel a bit overload, especially when, once again, The Price is Right is interrupted. That's a different level, you understand.
What you do during your executive time, David.
Right.
To Campaign 2020, a new NPR PBS NewsHour Mayor's poll shows that the majority of the public isn't too thrilled with President Trump's direction for the country, but they're not impressed as well with Democrats' direction for the country. So what does that say to the both of you? And we'll start with ladies first.
Well, I think the late Senator John McCain used to joke that the only people who still liked him were his family and his paid staff. So this is not unusual that people are disenchanted with Washington. I think it was a big part of why President Trump was elected in the first place. He was going to shake things up. People thought that he was going to fight for them. So we'll see if people think that after 4 years he did fight for them. And also if there's someone on the Democratic side who they think might be able to fit that same mold and go against Washington and deliver for them and their families.
Yeah, and I think the intensity in that Marist poll show that independents are just like, you know, either side. It's just they're not enthused with either side. And that's a problem for Democrats. I mean, you know, for Trump, it's all about the base, right? And Ralph Reed described this. Ralph Reed, the evangelical organizer and political strategist, called this a Braveheart election, where both bases are coming in with swords ready to go. So if Democrats need to get independents jazzed because margins are won at the elections, and I think it's going to hurt them them more than it will Trump. Trump's got to get his base out. That's the bottom line.
All right. David and Caitlin, thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, when we come back, why the former president of Planned Parenthood called it quits.
Prophecy thousands of years old,
We were called to be a light to the world.
being fulfilled today. Discover how. Get to life. Call 1-800-700-7000.
We consider it our duty to reach out and help others around the world.
For a gift of $10 or more, you can own the acclaimed CBN documentary To Life. Just call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to cbn.com.
To treat a human, no matter what he is, which religious he have, which color he is. This is what I'm doing.
See how the people of Israel are fulfilling prophecy
History is being written, and I want to be a part of it.
by sharing their knowledge
In Africa, in Asia, in South America, in East Europe.
and their love.
This is how we work. This is us.
Get to life. Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to cbn.com.
Get Protect Your Sleep and discover how to improve the quality of your life. A free DVD or booklet from the Christian Broadcasting Network.
If you're not a great sleeper, you can do things to make yourself a great sleeper. If you're already a pretty good sleeper, you can enhance your sleep and be even better.
5 leading experts help remove the obstacles between you and restorative sleep.
When you don't get a restful night's sleep, you wake up with an accumulation of stress.
Call 1-800-700-7000 or go to cbn.com to get your free DVD or booklet today.
Everything you do better with a good night's sleep.
You'll discover how food affects your sleep, how to put insomnia to rest, explore effective remedies for sleep apnea, and much more in Protect Your Sleep. Wake up to your best life and get Protect Your Sleep today. Call 1-800-700-7000 or go to cbn.com to get your free DVD or booklet.
A scathing op-ed by the former head of Planned Parenthood is sending ripples throughout both sides of the entrenched debate over abortion. Writing in the New York Times, former Planned Parenthood President Leanna Wen said, "I believe abortion is about health care, not politics. Many of my colleagues disagreed." Citing partisan differences in the abortion debate, Wen wrote that we need to stop treating those who differ from our own view with scorn and suspicion, and instead work together to safeguard our health, our rights, and our future. The emergency physician said she was asked to leave for, quote, changing the direction of Planned Parenthood and failed in her attempt to depoliticize the organization.
Well, Abby Johnson is a former Planned Parenthood clinic director who now works as a pro-life activist. Johnson resigned after watching an abortion via an ultrasound. This year, her memoir, Unplanned, was made into a movie. Abby Johnson spoke with CBN News Today.
I thought it was an interesting move when Planned Parenthood hired Dr. Leanna Wen. I think they were trying to give themselves some credibility, hiring a physician. But they really need an activist because they're really not in the business of promoting healthcare, even providing standard healthcare. They're in the business of abortion, period.
And joining us now is Steve Adan, the Chief Legal Officer for Americans United for Life, or AUL. Stephen, thank you so much for being with us.
My pleasure, John. Thank you.
Well, you just heard Abby Johnson there. Is she right?
Abby's right. My dear friend was a Planned Parenthood director. She knows the organization intimately, and she knows that Planned Parenthood is really not about health care. So the mistake that Dr. Wen made, unfortunately, is the same mistake that thousands of American women make every year. She trusted Planned Parenthood when Planned Parenthood said it was all about women's health care. The truth is that if you look at their annual disclosures, their services to women have been dropping year by year, in some cases precipitously. STI treatment, cancer screenings, breast cancer screenings, they've all been dropping. And in fact, during the 12 years that Cecile Richards, Leanna Wen's predecessor, was president, they lost almost a quarter of their clientele, of their patients. Now, if you were the CEO of a corporation that lost 25% of its clientele over 10 years, would you still be in the job? I don't think so. The only explanation is it's all about abortion. Abortion is the only thing that's gone up and up and up. So much so that recently they bragged that they now have a 40% share in the market, so to speak, for elective abortion.
How detrimental is this latest news to Planned Parenthood?
I think it's got to damage them because it puts the lie to what they've been saying all along, that they are a healthcare organization. Here they hired a doctor that was well respected out of Baltimore. She was the spokesperson. She wanted to make it more about bringing people in, talking about healthcare. And when she said abortion is not political, that, I think, to Planned Parenthood's board was like a whistle. And they said, whoa, wait a minute. It has to be political. We're in a political fight. Abortion, the support for abortion is at a low point historically. And the last straw was last weekend when she penned an editorial in the Washington Post where she talked about her recent very unfortunate miscarriage. Now, she drew the wrong conclusion. Strangely, she said as a result of her miscarriage experience that she thinks that abortion is even more important. I don't understand that reasoning, but she at least should get empathy from all of us for an unfortunate situation, but the board thought it was too much for her to be talking about a miscarriage. They wanted her to be out pounding the pulpit about elective abortion, and that's why she got the axe.
Stephen, the Trump administration is delaying enforcing a mandate that announced last week, that mandate requiring family planning clinics to immediately stop referring women to for abortions. Your thoughts when you hear that?
I think that it's a long time coming, and it's a very good idea. You just had Abby Johnson. She was in charge of a Planned Parenthood, and she talks about how the women would come to one side of the, I think it was actually 2 different floors, one floor of the building for family planning, and then they would be ushered upstairs for abortion.
But if I may, your thoughts on the delay of the mandate?
That's unfortunate. There's no need for it. Planned Parenthood has made it clear that it will not comply, quote unquote, and the Trump administration should take them at their word. This rule has been upheld by the Supreme Court. It makes a lot of sense to require the separation of facilities and finances between abortion and family planning, because taxpayers should not have to pay for abortion with taxpayer dollars. It's a matter of conscience.
All right, Stephen Adan, thank you so much for being with us today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Well, coming up, the nation pays tribute to a Supreme Court justice, remembering John Paul Stevens.
Are you suffering from feeling tired or worn out during the day? Can you not turn off your brain at night? You are not alone. Hi, I'm Dr. Michael Bruce, the sleep doctor, and I've partnered with the Christian Broadcasting Network, and we're going to bring you some unbelievable information that you can use tonight to get a better night's rest.
Wake up to your best life. Call 1-800-700-7000 or go to cbn.com to get your free copy of Protect Your Sleep today.
If you want to be an attorney with a passion for serving people and for excellence, Regent University needs to be high on your list.
Regent's award-winning law school doesn't just create lawyers. We create leaders, judges, prosecutors and defense lawyers, civil litigators, and leaders in government.
My focus has been trying to really make sure we have the future leaders we need for the bench and the bar and for society generally.
You'll learn from highly credentialed leaders who are current and former judges, distinguished scholars, and ACLJ counsel.
I'm so glad I chose Regent. The relationships here have been amazing. The faculty have been amazing. Not everybody's called to the same thing when they leave law school, but they're called by a God who has a purpose for their lives, and He is going to use that education to make a difference in the world.
Regent will prepare you to be a purpose-driven, practice-ready lawyer. To start your rewarding law career, complete the online application, submit your transcripts, and take the law school admissions test by July. Apply today.
If you want to be an attorney with a passion for serving people and for excellence, Regent University needs to be high on your list.
Regent's award-winning law school doesn't just create lawyers. We create leaders, judges, prosecutors and defense lawyers, civil litigators, and leaders in government. Ready to become a purpose-driven, practice-ready lawyer? To start your rewarding career, complete the online application, submit your transcripts, and take the law school admissions test by July.
Well, today the public, law clerks, and former Supreme Court justices joined to honor a former Supreme Court justice. President and First Lady Melania Trump paid their respects following a ceremony for the late Justice John Paul Stevens, who lay in repose today in the Great Hall of the Supreme Court. The former Associate Justice was 99 years old when he died last week. He was the second oldest serving justice when he retired in 2010. Justice Elena Kagan now fills the seat he occupied for 35 full terms on the High Court.
He was a modest and a humble man. He didn't think much about himself. And yet there was nobody who could stand on principle more firmly. There was nobody who stuck more firmly to his own convictions.
Kagan was the only member of the court to speak during today's brief ceremony. Coming up 50 years later, the mission to the moon gets a monumental memorial. Check this out next.
It's the new Superbook Bible app. It's packed with games, activities, and Superbook episodes that you can watch for free. Oh no! There's trivia, a fun daily devotional, and answers to your Bible questions. Plus, an easy-to-understand Bible the whole family will enjoy. You can even create your own Superbook character. Ta-da! It's the new Superbook Bible app. Free downloads on iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon.
Young people, millennials, are flocking to church.
It's not an exaggeration to say that we love to meet them and that we love to know their stories.
Come home to the Southern Gospel Station from CBN Radio. You'll enjoy a rich Southern blend of bluegrass, classic gospel, and Southern Gospel favorites. CBN Southern Gospel. Available now at cbnradio.com.
Woohoo! Hi, Superbook fans. Here's something else you'll love. It's the new Superbook Bible app. It's packed with games, activities, and Superbook episodes that you can watch for free. Oh no! There's trivia, a fun daily devotional, and answers to your Bible questions. Plus, an easy-to-understand Bible the whole family will enjoy. You can even create your own Superbook character. Ta-da! Whoa!
No Spur Falls, man. Come with...
Sorry, pardon me. Sorry, excuse me. Ouch!
Are you getting this?
Earn super points to win daily prizes, too. And so much more! Time to get back to my adventures. See you soon! It's the new Superbook Bible app. Free downloads on iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon.
Well, this weekend, the nation remembered a monumental movement 50 years after the U.S. left the first human footsteps on the moon.
Here in Washington, onlookers flocked to a mesmerizing projection displaying the Saturn V rocket, launching the first men to the moon. The launch sequence projecting on the Washington Monument gave a glimpse of the single biggest event ever televised, with 600 million people watching the moon landing on July 20th, 1969. Jenna, were you out there?
No, we were just talking about this. It was way too hot here in Washington this weekend.
Agreed.
Goodness.
Well, that's a wrap for tonight's Faith Nation.
Have a great evening.